You think your decisions are yours, don't you? Your choices, your reactions, your desires, your fears. But what if Freud was right? And almost every move you make as an adult is actually controlled by a version of you that never grew up? What if the way you love, the way you argue, the way you chase, the way you run, the way you collapse when someone raises their voice has nothing to do with the moment you're in and everything to do with the childhood you survived? Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever caught yourself reacting too intensely to something small? And afterwards, you couldn't explain why it hit you so hard? Have you ever attached yourself to someone too fast? Or pushed someone away too quickly? Or felt hurt by something that shouldn't have mattered? Freud believed that these moments aren't random. They're patterns. Deep emotional imprints baked into your mind long before you knew how to defend it. Patterns that don't fade just because you grew older. Patterns that hide inside your choices, your relationships, your impulses, your fears. And here's the part most people never realize. You didn't choose these patterns, you inherited them. You learned them before you had language, before you had memory, before you had control. But they're still shaping you, still guiding you, still deciding for you, even now. And tonight, we're going to uncover them, one by one. Not as a list, not as theory, but as the psychological fingerprints Freud believed define the life you live today. Let's begin. One pattern Freud believed shapes a lifetime begins when a child learns that love isn't something that arrives. It's something you have to earn. It starts in tiny moments you barely remember. Moments where affection depended on your behavior. When you got praised only if you were quiet, only if you performed well, only if you didn't cause trouble. Maybe your parents weren't unkind, just overwhelmed, stressed, inconsistent. But a child doesn't understand chaos. A child understands patterns. And the pattern becomes, if I want to be loved, I have to work for it. Look at your adult relationships. See how it repeats. You stay in situations where you feel unseen because you hope your effort will eventually be enough. You chase people who give you crumbs because crumbs feel familiar. You overthink every text, every tone, every pause, because you've learned that connection can disappear at any moment. Think about the last time someone pulled away emotionally. Did your first instinct say, that's their issue? Or did it whisper, I need to do better? That whisper doesn't come from adulthood. It comes from childhood. This is the first pattern taking control of your decisions, long before you realize it. Another childhood pattern forms when you grow up in a home where your emotions were dismissed, minimized, or quietly punished. Not with violence, but with comments like, stop overreacting. You're too sensitive. Don't start crying again. So what does a child do? They learn to shut down the emotional parts of themselves that made the adults uncomfortable. They bury sadness. They mute joy. They swallow anger. They carry guilt like it's part of their identity. Now look at your adult self. When someone asks, are you okay? You say, I'm fine, even when your chest feels heavy. When something hurts you, you convince yourself it's not a big deal. When someone crosses a boundary, you explain it away instead of speaking up. And the saddest part, you think that's emotional maturity. But really, it's the survival strategy of a child who learned that being honest about their feelings comes with a cost. This pattern doesn't just shape your relationships, it shapes your identity. You become the person who holds everything in and wonders why nobody truly sees you. A third pattern Freud described appears in children who grow up having to manage the emotions of the adults around them. If you had a parent whose mood decided the atmosphere of the entire house, you learned fast, pay attention, predict danger, balance everything quietly. Maybe you learned to read every shift in their voice. Maybe you memorized the sound of their footsteps. Maybe you checked their face before you spoke. Not because you were scared, but because you needed to know which version of them you were getting today. And here's the truth. A child who must anticipate chaos becomes an adult who lives in constant emotional vigilance. Look at your life now. You walk into rooms scanning faces. You soften your personality depending on who's present. You apologize before you've done anything wrong. You take responsibility for everyone's mood, like it's your job to keep the peace. When someone is upset, you feel guilty, even when you had nothing to do with it. When someone pulls away, you panic, because your nervous system learned that distance means danger. This pattern shapes your decisions without asking permission. It turns relationships into emotional balancing acts. It makes love feel like work and safety feel unfamiliar. Not because you're weak, but because as a child, you became the emotional adult in a house full of unregulated grown-ups. There's another pattern Freud believed shapes the way you attach to people. The fear of abandonment that grows when love felt inconsistent or unstable in childhood. It doesn't require dramatic moments, just small ones that echo for years, a parent leaving without explanation, a caregiver who came close but pulled away just as quickly, promises broken casually, attention given only when convenient. A child sees these moments as truth, and the truth becomes people don't stay. So look at your adult relationships now. When someone doesn't reply immediately, your chest tightens. When someone acts distant, your mind spirals. When someone leaves, even for a day, the old panic wakes up. You try to calm yourself with logic, but fear doesn't respond to logic. It responds to memory. This pattern makes you attach too quickly, hold on too tightly, or run away before someone else gets the chance. Not because you're clingy, but because the child in you still believes every goodbye might be the last. Another pattern begins when a child grows up being compared to siblings, to cousins, to imaginary children who were always better behaved, quieter, smarter, more acceptable. Comparison isn't motivation, it's psychological erosion. It slowly teaches you that who you are is somehow not enough, that you must compete for love, prove your worth, earn your place, and it doesn't go away. It shows up later in poisoned self-worth. You feel threatened by other people's success, not because you're jealous, but because you were taught that every win someone else has means there is less room for you. You might hide your achievements or overachieve to exhaustion or feel empty even when you're doing well, because no accomplishment ever truly lands. It never fills the void created by years of subtle comparison. Freud believed this pattern creates adults who chase approval endlessly, but can't absorb it when it's finally offered. You become someone who's always running, but never arriving. A sixth pattern appears when a child grows up learning that emotional chaos equals love. If affection in your home was warm one moment and cold the next, if your caregiver's mood swung without warning, if praise and punishment were unpredictable, you learn to associate instability with connection. That's why calm people feel suspicious to you now, why healthy relationships feel boring, why someone who treats you consistently doesn't spark anything. It's not chemistry, it's conditioning. Your nervous system grew up in turbulence, so peace feels foreign and chaos feels like home. You may find yourself choosing partners who are hot and cold, friends who drain you, situations that exhaust you, because your body recognizes inconsistency as the familiar rhythm of love. This pattern makes you mistake emotional intensity for emotional depth, but depth doesn't hurt, intensity does. And finally, there's the pattern Freud believed hides in the deepest part of the mind, the belief that your needs are a burden. This forms in homes where expressing needs leads to inconvenience, annoyance, frustration, or punishment. Maybe you asked for help and were told you were dramatic. Maybe you expressed fear and were told you were weak. Maybe you needed support and were met with coldness or resentment. So you learned to shrink, to cope alone, to be silent, to need less, to become low maintenance in a way that hurts you. And now, you apologize before asking for anything. You hesitate to speak up. You settle for the bare minimum because you don't want to bother anyone. You carry pain quietly because you believe your feelings take up too much space. This pattern shapes your life the most. Because if your needs feel like a burden, you will never allow yourself the love, stability, or satisfaction you deserve. You will keep choosing less, accepting less, expecting less, dash, dash. Not because it's all you want, but because you think it's all you're allowed to ask for. You might be wondering why all of this feels so familiar, why these patterns sound less like theory and more like memory. And the answer is simple. You didn't become who you are by accident. You became who you are by surviving the emotional environment you were born into. Your childhood wasn't just a phase, it was programming, psychological wiring, a blueprint your mind created to keep you alive long before you had the power to choose anything different. And here's the truth Freud understood better than anyone. Those early patterns don't disappear. They don't fade. They don't politely step aside just because you grew up. They stay. They shape. They guide. They speak in the background of every decision you make. But the moment you see them, the moment you finally recognize them for what they are, they lose their power because awareness breaks the loop. Awareness interrupts the pattern. Awareness gives you back what childhood quietly took away, the ability to choose your own life. You are not obligated to repeat the story you were raised in. You're not required to become a reflection of the people who taught you how to love, how to fear, how to react, how to hide, how to survive. You can untangle the wiring. You can rewrite the script. You can become someone your past could never shape. Not someone who doesn't live through childhood patterns, but finally steps out of them. The truth is simple. Your childhood explains you, but it does not define you. And now that you've seen the blueprint, you get to decide what the next chapter looks like. Protect your mind, understand their influence, rewrite what was once written for you.